Hello, everyone, and welcome back. We're in our study of the Gospel of Mark, and we're at chapter 5. And for those of you that are following with the New Jersey Singles Ministry, we divided our study of Mark into 4 sections. So we did 1 through 4, now we're looking at 5 through 8, and then we'll continue on with 2 other sections after that. And you'll notice that I'm doing 5, 6, 7, and part of 8 on video, because I actually wanted to teach the last part of chapter 8 live, because chapter 8, the end of it, is, I think, a pivotal section in the Gospel of Mark. I think it's the pivotal section in the Gospel of Mark. It's also one of my favorite parts of the whole New Testament or the whole Bible. And so I'd rather teach that class live, so I'm going to prep that class by giving you 5, 6, 7, part of 8, and this begins that. In chapter 5, we're continuing on with the miracle stories. The last miracle story was the calming of the storm. Now we're going to have the healing of a demoniac. We're also going to have the healing of a woman who has spent all of her money trying to get healed from a sickness and has been unable to find healing. And then we're going to actually look at a resurrection story. So all of this demonstrates that Jesus is the Son of God. And in this case, a demoniac who was totally out of control and had no hope of being helped, a woman with an issue of blood who had spent all of her money looking for a medical cure and was totally without help, and somebody who had died and obviously was totally without help, and the parent who longed for something to be done. And so these are extreme stories that are given here, but the point is that Jesus is Lord over extreme situations. He just calmed the storm at sea. And remember, there's no chapter breaks in the Bible. So basically, we're going from 4 parable stories into Jesus calming a storm at sea. Impossible, but Jesus does it. Jesus casting out this demoniac and helping a person who is cutting himself, unable to be chained and bound, living in a cemetery. In other words, totally outside of the help of people. Jesus helps him. A woman, let me go through the woman with the issue of blood who spent everything that she had basically trying to get a cure, couldn't find it, totally in a helpless situation, and the death of a child, totally helpless situation. These stories back to back to back to back until we get to chapter 6 show us that Jesus helps even in what seems like a helpless situation. And Mark is just ringing that bell. Just 4 times, ringing that bell, saying, hey, Jesus can help you. Whatever your situation is in life, don't despair. Jesus can help. Where do you go? You go to Jesus, because Jesus can help. So let's look at the demoniac first. And I'll read this, and then I'll just make some comments, and we'll work our way through this passage of Scripture. And just to let you know, I'm reading from my own translation, so it'll read differently from what you're following along in. They went across the lake to the region of the Gerasenes. Now, the Gerasenes, that region was on the eastern side of the Sea of Galilee, and it was the Roman territory, the Gentile territory. And I think one of the ways that the Gospels are misread is that people seem to think that Jesus only spent time with the Jews and only taught the Jews and only reached out to Judea or to Israel, but that's just not true. There are many times where Jesus traveled across to the Gentile territory or to the Roman territory. He goes north to Tyre and Sidon. He helps the Syrophoenician woman there. So he does, even in his own ministry, he's starting to break down this barrier between Jew and Greek, between Roman, Greek, and Jew, and reaches out to all kinds of people in his ministry. And it's important to see that when you're reading the Gospels. When Jesus climbed out of the boat, immediately a man with an evil spirit came out of the tombs to meet him. Sometimes the spirits have been called unclean spirits, because that's a theme in Mark, that Jesus cleanses people and he helps people that are unclean. But also these spirits are evil spirits. They're demonic spirits. So that's what they are. And in the first century world, there was a belief that demons lived among people, that the spiritual battle was a real battle between good and evil, and evil manifested itself in the minions of Satan being on the earth. Now, we don't think about that so much in our Western civilized scientific culture, but I think we need to think about it, because I believe the demons are still with us. They are still real. And when you travel to other parts of the world, you begin to see people talk about it a lot more. And here's my theory of why we don't maybe see so many manifestations, because we've already bought the lie. We've already bought into the lie. If we say that demons don't exist, we're saying we're not a part of a spiritual battle that is raging all around us, even in intense ways like you see in the New Testament. And so if we bought into that lie, why would Satan try to make it any different than that? I mean, why would he try to force you to see something that might cause you to take pause and to get more engaged in the battle, pray more, read more, get with people more, fortify yourself more, you're ready for battle more, that kind of thing. And I just think that when we misthink about this, it hurts us. So, verse 3. This man lived in the tombs, and no one was able to bind him. What I want you to see here in these next few verses, 3 verses, is this man is in a situation that is dire and bleak, and he cannot be helped by any person. So what's Jesus going to be able to do with him? I think that's the question Mark is asking. This man lived in the tombs, and no one was able to bind him, not even with a chain. He had been bound with shackles and chains, and he tore apart the chains and broke the shackles in pieces. Supernatural power this person had because of the demon. No one was strong enough to control him. And all through the night he cried out in the tombs and in the hills, and he cut himself with sharp stones. So self-harm was a part of his life too, because of this evil spirit. And so, what's going to happen when Jesus enters the picture? Seeing Jesus from a distance, the man ran and fell on his knees before him. He screamed out with a loud shriek, saying, "What am I to you, Jesus, Son of the Most High God?" Pay attention to that. That's important, because here's a man possessed by an evil spirit, a demon. And he recognizes that Jesus is the Son of the Most High God. And if he can see it, why can't others see it? And if he sees it, why don't even his 12 disciples see it? And so Mark is making that contrast there by including this story. And that's really the point of these miracle stories, for us to get to see the power of Jesus demonstrates that Jesus is the Son of God. In God's name, I beg you, don't torture me, for Jesus had said to him, "Evil spirit, come out of the man." Jesus asked him, and this is one of the things that you see commonly in the miracle stories of Jesus. Jesus just doesn't heal the person and that's it. He connects with the person. He wants to know about the person. And Jesus, often there's physical touch involved, because Jesus connects with the people through physical touch. And so through conversation and touch and asking questions, Jesus doesn't just minister to the physical needs, but also to the spiritual and emotional needs of the person. And I think that's important, even as we go about our healing ministry today, whether that's through through benevolent work that we're doing, or through helping with specialty ministries like helping with addiction and that sort of thing, that we're not just trying to heal some type of physical hurt, but that we're trying to heal an emotional hurt and a spiritual hurt that goes along with that physical hurt. And that's what Jesus does here. He answers, the demon answers, or the man answers. He said to Jesus, "Legion is my name, for we are many." Over and over, the evil spirit urged Jesus not to send them out of the area. And some people, when they talk about the topic of demons, talk about demons being geographic in nature and being a part of a specific geography. I don't know that that's exactly what is going on there, but it's a possibility, so I mention it. On the hillside in the vicinity, a large herd of pigs was feeding. The demons pleaded with Jesus, saying, "Send us into the pigs, let us enter them." I've been in so many Bible studies, not so many, but I've been in a few Bible talks where people were like, well, look, here, these are Jews that aren't living up to the law because they have pigs there. But, the fact is, this is the Roman territory, and so there are going to be pigs in a Roman territory. It's the Gentile territory, not the Jewish territory. There are pigs living in Israel today, but they don't allow. And this is very interesting because I've seen it myself. In order to keep the pigs from being actually literally in Israel, they have them on risers above the ground so that their feet never touch the ground. But they're raising pigs in the Holy Land, in the nation of Israel, but they have these risers above the ground so that the pigs never touch the ground, and therefore that ground isn't unclean. That is happening right now. But here, they're in the Roman territory, and the Romans loved their bacon, and so they had pigs there. Jesus permitted them, that's the spirits. He says, the spirits departed from the man and entered the pigs. The herd rushed headlong down the steep bank into the lake and were drowned. There were about 2,000 pigs in the herd. So their name is Legion, and they killed basically a legion of pigs as they came out of the man. Those tending the pigs fled and reported the event to the people in the town and the countryside. People came to see what had occurred. When they came to Jesus, they saw the man who had been possessed by Legion. They saw him sitting clothed and of sound mind, and they were frightened. Those who had seen the event related to the people what had occurred to the possessed man and what happened to the pigs as well. The people began to implore Jesus to leave their region. And so, why would they implore him to leave their region? They understood the unique power of Jesus to the point that it scared them. That's how unique Jesus was with his power. Nobody else had been able to help this person. Jesus does. Jesus is unique. And that uniqueness caused them to be afraid, be terrified. And but when we see the uniqueness of Jesus, we ought to be drawn to him, not terrified of him, but drawn to him. In verse 18, as Jesus was embarking in the boat, and this is a very tender scene here between Jesus and the man who had been possessed begged to go with him. Jesus did not allow it. He said to the man, "Go to your family and report to them everything the Lord has done for you, and how he has had mercy on you." And the man went away, and he began to preach in the 10 cities of the Decapolis everything Jesus did for him. And the people marveled at his report. And so you have the man wanting to go with Jesus, because Jesus had helped him. But Jesus instead says, go back to your community. Okay, you need to go to your family. Let them know what's happened to you. Go back and report to them everything that God has done for you. And he does not only that, okay? In fact, it doesn't even mention if he did that or not. Maybe he was so excited that he just had to go preach to the 10 cities instead. But he goes and he preaches to the 10 cities of the Decapolis, these 10 Roman cities. I've been to Bethshan, the capital of the Decapolis, and it's an archaeological dig today, but it's a very, very impressive Roman city. And the man went and preached about what Jesus had done to him in all of the 10 cities of the Decapolis. Jesus restored him not only to health, but also restored his emotional well-being. And while giving him emotional well-being, also gave him spiritual well-being. And the man had the confidence to go and to preach what Jesus had done for him to the 10 cities of the Decapolis. He restores him to his community. He restores him to his family. He takes a situation that is utterly bleak and helpless, nothing to be done for this man, and he turns his life right side up, which Jesus can do for any of us today. And when that happens, when our lives are turned right side up, don't we want to talk about it? Don't we want to share that with the 10 cities? Don't we just have this deep longing inside to tell people about what Jesus has done. Well, if our lives had been turned right side up by Jesus, that should be the reaction. That's the reaction of this man. Okay, now let's look at a healing and a resurrection. This is a fantastic story. We're going to start here in verse 21, and we'll read and make some comments. Jesus again crossed over the other side of the lake in a boat, and large crowds followed him. He gets going back to the Jewish side now. Jesus stayed on the lakeside. One of the rulers of the synagogue, named Jairus, saw Jesus. Jairus approached him and fell at his feet. He cried out with many words, saying, "My daughter is close to death. Come and place your hands on her so that she will get well and live." Jesus went with him. And so you've got this healing story of a person who's about to die, and then sandwiched in between, that begins it, and then there's a story of a woman with an issue of blood, and then the conclusion of that story. So it's a sandwich that Mark is doing here, and that happens here in this event, that Jesus is interrupted doing this amazing thing by this woman with a hemorrhage of blood. Let's see what happens in that part of the story. A large crowd was following Jesus. They pressed in on Jesus. In the crowd was a woman who had a hemorrhage of blood for 12 years. Jesus had suffered much she had suffered much and been under the care of many doctors. She had spent, notice this is important, she had spent everything she had on finding a cure, and she was not helped. In fact, she had grown worse. So, like the story of the demoniac, you have a person who is in a dire situation, totally helpless. Every place she's gone to receive help, nothing's worked. And now she's worse. And it seems like she might have been a rich person to start with, because medical care wasn't cheap. There was no insurance. You paid for it out of pocket for sure. And she'd seen doctor after doctor after doctor. Perhaps her husband had died and left her with wealth. And now she's just spent everything looking for an answer. That ever seem like your life, where you've just spent everything looking for an answer? There are people out there that feel that way. They've turned everywhere they know to turn to look for an answer, and they've not got an answer in their life. I'm talking about spiritually. That is where people are many times. This woman physically, that's where she was. And so the important thing is to see this is a situation that appears to be totally helpless. And then in verse 27, hearing about Jesus, she came with the crowd and followed behind him. She touched his garment. And look at this. She thought, if I touch his garment, I will be healed. And what happens? Immediately, her flow of blood dried up, and she felt in her body that her sickness had been cured. So she reaches out just to touch. Literally, when you read this in the Greek, it's the tassel that's hanging from his garment. She touches that tassel, and she feels the healing in her body. Just with a simple touch, reaching out to touch Jesus, she is healed. So she's gone to all these doctors. She's spent her fortune. She hasn't gotten better. She's gotten worse. And she touches Jesus, and she's healed. We've seen times where Jesus has reached out and touched the leper and made the leper clean. Now, by touching Jesus, she is cleansed. And she was unclean. I mean, the issue of blood made her unclean. She was not supposed to go to synagogue, to worship services. She was supposed to be outside of the community because of this flow of blood that would not stop. But with a touch, Jesus revives her physically, revives her back to her community, revives her spiritually. And I want you to see what happened next, because this is really important and fantastic. His apprentices said to him, I'm sorry. Right away, Jesus knew that his power had gone out from him, so they turned to the crowd and said, "Who touched my garment?" Jesus, his apprentices said to him, "You see this great crowd pressing in on you, and yet you ask, 'Who touched me?'" Jesus looked around to see who had touched him. Trembling with fear and knowing what had happened to her, the woman came, bowed before Jesus, and told him the whole truth. Now, what I want you to see there is Jesus felt the power go out, and it wasn't for him. It wasn't good enough for him just to heal the woman and stop there. He wanted to actually give her a second touch of grace. That'll come later in Mark chapter 8. But he wanted to have this conversation with her like he had with Legion. Again, it's not enough for Jesus just to heal the physical wound and the physical hurt. He wants to heal the spiritual hurt. He wants to heal the emotional hurt. He wants to heal the hurt that separates us from community and from being with each other. He wants us to be whole and complete. And that's the healing ministry of Jesus. And that's what he does here. Trembling with fear and knowing what had happened to her, the woman came, bowed down before Jesus, and told him the whole truth. Jesus said to her, notice this, she's already been healed. She's felt it. Jesus has felt it. "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in shalom. Go in peace and be healed of your disease." So she's already been healed physically, but that's not all there is to healing. There's also the healing of our wholeness. Shalom. That's what peace can mean, wholeness. Jesus wanted her to be whole, W-H-O-L-E, to be complete. So now that she's got the physical healing, live in community with other people, go back to synagogue again, be able to worship with others, be able to rejoin your family, be able to feel complete in your life. That's what Jesus is all about with his healing. So it's a fantastic story right there. Now let's continue on, verse 35. While he was speaking, some from the house of the ruler of the synagogue arrived, saying, "Your daughter is dead. Why bother the teacher?" That seems like a really tragic moment, right? Jesus is helping this woman with the issue of blood, and during this time, the child dies. And verse 36, when Jesus heard the words they spoke, he said to the ruler of the synagogue, "Fear not, only have faith." Jesus did not allow anyone in the crowd to come with him except Peter, John, and John's brother James. They went into the synagogue ruler's house and saw a commotion. There was much weeping and wailing. Upon entering, Jesus said to them, "Why are you creating such a commotion, and why are you weeping? The child is not dead, but sleeping." They laughed at him. Imagine that, laughing at Jesus. Jesus expelled all of them. He took the child's father and mother with him and entered the room with the child. Grasping the child's hand, he said to her, "Talitha cum," which translated means, "Little girl, get up." Immediately, notice immediately, that this happens and she's just restored right away. The little girl rose and walked around. Not only did she get up, but she walked around, showing complete resurrection. She was 12 years old. The others were amazed and greatly astonished. He commanded them not to let anyone know about this, and he said, "Give her something to eat." She was famished after being dead and being raised from the dead. So Jesus now demonstrates power over death. We've seen him calm the storm. We've seen him have power over demonic power, demonic evil. We've seen him heal in situations that were helpless and there was no healing that could be found. And now he has power over death. And in this story, like in the other stories, notice that he doesn't just restore her to life and give her life back. He restores her to wholeness, to community. She's walking around. She's hungry. Give her something to eat. She's back with her family again. And that's what Jesus does. And so the point of Mark chapter 5, and this is a really great chapter. I hope that you've enjoyed looking at it as much as I have. Mark chapter 5 is amazing in that if you include the story above this with the calming of the storm, you have these 4 miracle stories. So you had 4 parables and now 4 miracle stories, back to back to back. And you have Jesus' power over nature, and then his power over demonic powers, and then his power over death, and sandwiched in between that story of the power over death, the power over an illness that cannot be cured. But also in these situations, especially these last 3, Jesus doesn't just, because in the last 3 he's dealing with people, Jesus doesn't just cure the person and, that's it, that's over. I cured the person, they should be grateful, let me move on. He speaks to them. He interacts with them. He shows his care and compassion and concern for them. He calls Legion by name, wants to know that name. He interacts with the family here. Feed the girl. He, just restores people back not only to their health, but also to their emotional health, to their spiritual health, and to their community health, and restores them to community, restores them to worshiping again, and takes care of the whole person and not just that one physical aspect that was going wrong with the person. So I hope that you see that that's what Jesus does. And in our lives, that's what Jesus wants to do with each of us. He wants to make us whole. He wants to help with the whole person. He wants to give us shalom, peace, wholeness in our lives. And as we are following Jesus, we need to look at the wholeness of our lives and see, is there any part of our lives where we're not giving to Jesus and therefore he's not helping us? Or are we giving Jesus our emotions? Are we giving him our physical health? Are we giving him our mental health? Are we giving him our spiritual health? Are we giving him our community and the community that we live in? Are we giving him our family? Are we giving him our worship and even the worship community? There are so many aspects to our lives, and Jesus wants to be Lord over all of them so that he can help us and heal us in all of these different ways. And I think that's the beautiful story that you get from these 3 fantastic miracle stories in Mark chapter 5. A beautiful chapter with beautiful endings for each of the stories that are there that help to give us hope for our own lives and what Jesus can do for us today. Thank you.